The bottom line in business talk. Voice America Business.
The Small Business Trends radio program on Voice America is brought to you by Six Disciplines Corporation. www.sixdisciplines.com/VA. Welcome to Small Business Trends Radio with Anita Campbell. In the next hour, Anita and her guests present current trends in small business and how you can take advantage of them today. So grab a pencil and turn up your speakers. Here's your host, Anita Campbell.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I'm Anita Campbell, your host, and I am so glad you could join us today for another edition of Small Business Trends Radio. We've got another great show. The topic is franchising in the new millennium, the latest trends. Marty McDermott, president of Franchise Interviews, is our featured guest today. I will be introducing Marty in just a few minutes from now. Today he's going to be speaking about the ABCs of franchising. For instance, did you know that during the second quarter of this year, 95 new franchise concepts evolved? There are so many prospective entrepreneurs interested in choosing a franchise. Listen today, and you'll find out where to begin. Marty is the founder and president of Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews gives an up-close and behind-the-scenes look at franchising through their biweekly newsletter. He is also a marketing professor for Kaplan University and Gibbs College, and he has a bachelor's degree in marketing, an MBA in international business, and a post-MBA in entrepreneurial studies from Farley Dickinson University. Well, welcome to the show, Marty. It's great to have you on.
Hi, Anita. Thanks for having me on your show. It's such a pleasure to finally get to speak with you.
Well, that's terrific. Marty, first, why don't you tell our guests where you're joining us from today?
Well, today, Anita, I'm calling from New Jersey. I'm actually in between classes. As you mentioned in my bio, I'm an adjunct professor for two business schools. I teach marketing for Gibbs College, which is in Piscataway, New Jersey, as well as Kaplan University, which is one of the bigger online universities in the United States. But Franchise Interviews is located in Williams Township, Pennsylvania. And for your listeners who aren't familiar with Pennsylvania, we're right along the Delaware River. It's a nice part of Pennsylvania. We're about 50 miles north of Philadelphia, several miles south of Easton, and 300 miles east of Pittsburgh, which I understand from Stacy, that's where you're originally from.
Yes, I am originally from Pittsburgh. In fact, one guest remarked on my Pittsburgh accent.
I think I recall that. I think I listened to that show, actually, your Pittsburgh accent. That's something. Have you ever been out towards the Easton area?
Oh, yes, absolutely, and okay. It's wonderful.
Yeah, we're fairly new to Pennsylvania. We've been there 2 years now. I've been from New Jersey most of my life and lived in New York for a little while as well, and it's just a wonderful state, so we've really taken to it.
Well, Marty, how did you get involved in franchising?
Well, Anita, it was back in 1999. I had a really good job. I was working for a company called Venture Direct Worldwide. And Venture, they're a Madison Avenue firm. They're one of the bigger direct marketing firms in the country. My job with Venture was an online media sales rep. And I specialize in building advertisers for a new business opportunity website. It was called the Be Your Own Boss Forum. And this was when the Internet was, I guess you could say, was starting to boom. It was really taking off during that time. And the advertisers for this particular website would typically be any kind of business that you would see in like a business opportunity magazine, such as like a vending operation or maybe like medical billing or multi-level marketing. And I figured that a great client for this website would be franchises. And there was a franchise show at the Jacob Javits Center in Manhattan, which is a fantastic place to have a trade show. I don't know if you've ever been. Have you ever been to the Jacob Javits before?
No, actually, I have not.
It's a massive place. I know your show last week was on. I think it was last week was on trade shows.
Yes.
But it's such a fantastic place to have a trade show. I got there bright and early. I got there, it was on a Saturday, I guess it was about 9:30 in the morning, and the doors opened up at 10. And I stayed there all day. I think I stayed there till 5 o'clock that day, and I tried to speak to everyone possible. And, you know, it was interesting for me, Anita, because back then during that time, you know, my perception of franchising, probably like a lot of other people, was food franchises. You know, I thought, you know, McDonald's, or I thought Burger King, and I thought Dunkin' Donuts. But when I got there, you know, to find out that franchising was just so much more than that. There was advertising franchises. There was newspaper franchises. There were shoe repair franchises. I mean, you name it, they had it, you know, and that fascinated me, that whole concept. So I did a very good job at building advertisers for this particular website. But after working for Venture Direct, I guess it was about a year, I was having what was called, I guess you could say Michael Gerber calls like an entrepreneurial seizure. I wanted to, you know, ever since I've been a little kid, you know, I've told my wife this story 1,000 times. I think I wrote my first business plan when I was like 12 years old for a baseball card store. So I've always wanted to go into my own business, but this seemed to be the right time in my life to do it. So I wanted to start my own company/website that was just dedicated to franchising, a website where people could come to just get franchise information, you know, because franchises are a lot different than, like, let's say, like a business opportunity, like a vending route or a multi-level marketing type of operation. You know, I'll talk a little bit later more about that. But so I started writing a business plan, and in the process, while I was writing this business plan, I came across a website on the internet. It was called FranchiseAmerica.com, and they were getting fantastic search engine placement. They were coming up like in the top for like a Google or a Yahoo or an MSN. But what I noticed about the website is they really didn't have any advertisers. So I felt confident enough to call the owner up of the website. And I introduced myself, and I said, you know, I think we should talk. I have this idea. And, you know, we spoke for several weeks. I guess it was about 3 weeks, and we came to a partnership agreement. And Franchise America, you know, I was proud to say it became one of the bigger franchise websites on the internet. You know, we were definitely a main player. You know, when I first got into it back in 1999, there was only a handful of websites that was dedicated to franchising. So we were kind of like in the right place at the right time. And after 5 years of having Franchise America, then, you know, the company was sold to a competitor, and I found myself out of the franchise business, so you can say. And I was out of the business for about a year. And during that time, I was going for, as you mentioned in my bio, I was going for a post-MBA at Fairleigh Dickinson University in entrepreneurial studies. So I was still kind of connected to entrepreneurship, so you can say. But I missed the business so much, Anita, that I started Franchise Interviews. And I started it as a free newsletter. And what I did was I placed my banner on a variety of franchise websites. And I think I started with probably 5 or 6 subscribers to the newsletter. It was probably myself, my wife Connie, my parents, and a couple of friends. You know, I'm proud to say that, you know, we've built it to over 4,000 subscribers at this point. You know, so it's certainly growing. Yeah, and you know, so that's how I kind of ended up in franchising. So it certainly has become one of my passions. I really believe in it.
Well, listen, I want to ask you some definitions as we delve into some detailed questions here.
Sure.
First of all, what is a franchisor?
A franchisor is somebody who's actually created a system. You know, a system is the most important word in franchising. A system meaning like a method of doing business. It's interesting you asked this question. Have you ever seen the movie The Color Purple?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, my wife and I were watching it this weekend. She'd never seen the movie, so I said, you have to see this movie. And there's a great scene in the movie with Celie and Nettie, and Nettie's reading a book to her sister Celie. And they come across the word system. And Celie says to Nettie, she says, you know, what does system mean? And Nettie says, oh, it's kind of like a method of doing business, so you get the same result every single time. And that's franchising by definition. And the franchisor is somebody who actually created the system. So it's a step-by-step process.
Mm-hmm.
And
all right.
That, by the way, is a very long process. I mean, it's something that probably takes about a year to actually document. This is what's called like an operations manual.
Okay, hold that thought.
Okay.
I want to get another definition. What is a franchisee?
A franchisee is somebody who actually buys the system or the method of doing business. They have the right to use the company's name, trademark, and they follow the step-by-step process. So they're actually, the analogy is this, the analogy for franchising I use is the franchisor is the teacher and the franchisee is the student initially, and they kind of master the whole process, and hopefully they're going to follow this step-by-step process and get the same results as the franchisor.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, what is changing and different, as it relates to trends. Well, first of all, is there anything new in franchising, or does it all stay the same? And if so, what's different?
It's a great question. It's definitely different. There's been probably, I would say there's been about two big changes over the last couple of years. I would say the biggest change is the number of concepts that are now franchising to grow their business. It was amazing, Anita, that the 1 year that I was out of franchising and then I came back, I almost felt like a stranger. I felt very comfortable in franchising for a long time because I felt I spoke to every franchise in the United States, at one point or another. And then when I came back, there was all these new players. And so I was shocked at all the new concepts that evolved in such a short period of time. Before I came on the show today, I did a little research. And according to the IFA, they're the International Franchise Association. They're based in Washington, D.C. They have a lot of great information, by the way, on franchising. You can find their website address. It's franchise.org. Let's see. Over the past 3 years, nearly 900 concepts started franchising, and 500 of those concepts were in 2005 alone. I suspect that that's probably a record. I don't think that's ever been done in the history of franchising. So what that means in English is that there's more industries choosing franchising as a method of expanding their business.
All right. Well, we have to take a short break, so I'd like you to hold those thoughts. Do join us after the break. We'll be back in 2 minutes with more from Marty McDermott.
You're listening to The Bottom Line in Business Talk. Voice America Business.
Here's CEO and founder of Six Disciplines Corporation and author of Six Disciplines for Excellence, Gary Harpst, with this week's Six Disciplines tip of the day.
If you wanted to talk to someone about how to avoid a heart attack, the best time to talk to them is while they're fit and have the time, the energy, and the capability to do the preventative things to avoid it, as opposed to when they're in the emergency room. That then is not the time to speak about long-term fitness. The right kind of client is one who is actually already successful and has the wisdom and the insight to realize if they're going to sustain that success, they need to allocate some of their time and energy to doing the fundamental things that will change their future and avoid problems. We are targeting healthy organizations that want to do the things necessary to remain healthy. We are not targeting organizations that are in deep trouble because they need a different kind of help during that period of time.
For more information, visit us on the web at www.sixdisciplines.com/VA.
When it comes to running the business, there is nothing more important than timely industry information to leverage your bottom line. SmallBizTrends.com is the resource for trends, issues, and opportunities in the small business market. Daily trend articles, newsletters, RSS feeds, you can find it all at SmallBizTrends.com. For personalized consultation or commission trend analysis, SmallBizTrends.com editor Anita Campbell is available by emailing her at anita@anitacampbell.com. SmallBizTrends.com, your one-stop resource for trends that influence the global small business market. Are you a small business leader who seeks excellence in your business? Do you want to improve the short and long-term strategic planning in your business? Then you'll want to learn more about Six Disciplines. Six Disciplines is a new class of professional business improvement service which combines a systematic methodology, practical internet technologies, and local coaching to help the best organizations achieve lasting excellence. If you are committed to do what it takes for your organization to be excellent, log on to sixdisciplines.com/VA or download one of the many free charts, checklists, and other tools to put you on track to build excellence in your organization. To learn what it takes to be excellent, go to www.sixdisciplines.com/VA.
The bottom line in business talk. Voice America Business.
Welcome back to Small Business Trends Radio with Anita Campbell. If you have a question or comment, dial toll-free 866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Anita Campbell.
We're talking with Marty McDermott, who is president of Franchise Interviews. Now, Marty, right before the break, you mentioned that one of the big changes in franchising over the last couple of years has been the sheer growth in the number of franchise concepts that are out there. Why do you suppose that is?
I think because franchising now, Anita, has for the most part, a successful track record. You know, I mean, we have a history at this point, and people see the success of a company like Subway, which, Subway is now the number one franchise in the United States, and Quiznos is number two. And it's interesting because a lot of times when I ask my students or, prospective entrepreneurs, what do you think is the number one franchise in the United States? People still think McDonald's is number one. And actually, McDonald's, for the very first time, I think they're number 16, according to Entrepreneur's Top 500. So I don't think they were too happy. So it certainly has, there's certainly a track record of success in franchising.
And yeah, you might say we like our Subway our sub-standards.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of the product, so they're a fantastic franchise, by the way.
Okay. Well, what else has changed? I mean, are there other big changes, too?
There are. I would say, Anita, that, one of the next big changes is more people are researching franchises through the Internet. When I got back, when I started Franchise America back in 1999, I had this niche in the market because there wasn't really anyone out there doing what we were doing. And again, by the time the company was sold, I think there was 100 websites out there that was dedicated to franchising. The reason for that is because more people are looking for franchise opportunities through the Internet. A word of caution, though, when you're researching a franchise through the Internet, sometimes a particular franchise can look bigger than they really are. What I mean by that is you can have a franchise that maybe has one or two franchisees, but their franchise looks a lot more significant than, let's say, a Subway or a Quiznos, So it could be a little misleading sometimes when you are looking for a franchise through the Internet.
And I guess that means you have to do your due diligence, which we'll be talking about in a little bit.
Definitely, absolutely. You have to do your due diligence. But, I do want to mention, even though I'm not in the franchise show business, I think the shows are fantastic, though. I think it does give prospective franchisees or prospective entrepreneurs a chance to meet the franchise face-to-face. I think that's very important. This year, when I went to a couple franchise shows this year. The big one in Washington, D.C., which is sponsored by the International Franchise Expo. Just incredible. Again, the concept's out there. But what I did notice this year, compared to other years, is that the attendance is dropping. The couple seminars that I went to, there was like 5 or 6 people in there, which was kind of disappointing. I think the franchise shows have a lot to offer a prospective franchisee. Sometimes it gives you a chance to even test the product. I always say when you go to a franchise show, try to go hungry. Because there's so many samples. There's pizza and ice cream and yogurt, and I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan, Anita. If you've ever watched Seinfeld,
I am, yes.
Yeah, but they had it was the Soup Nazi, which it doesn't go under that name, by the way. But I think they go under the franchise, the Soup Man, and they started franchising now. And I had samples of their soup, and it was just totally out of this world. It was just an incredible product. It's one of those things that you say, wow, after trying it. So it does. It gives you a chance to try the product.
But why do you suppose that the attendance is down?
I would say it has to be attributed probably to the Internet, might be the days, too. Typically, the franchise shows, they run from like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that might have something to do with it. I'm not sure, but I would suspect that it's mainly because of the Internet. All the information is really right there. And you could do it from the comfort of your own home, so you don't have to travel to a place like Washington, D.C., which is a fun place to go to. I love going there every single year, but, maybe I think a lot of people don't want to travel either. You can get the same information from home. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
Are there other changes in the franchise industry or the whole world of franchising, or are those the big
I would say that those are the two big changes. Is the number of systems that have, come into existence, over the last 3 years. Again, 900, which I think is a significant number, and how people are actually finding a franchise now. But again, just, to the listeners, a word of caution is, when they are surfing on the Internet, you do have to be a little careful. Again, as you say, due diligence, very, very important.
Now, when you talk about the number of franchises, are you referring primarily to the U.S. market, or are you referring to a broader market? And also, could you give us an idea of what is the popularity level of franchises in countries other than the United States?
Well, I could definitely speak for the United States. I mean, I think in here, it's interesting. There's approximately, in the U.S., there's about 85 industries franchising here in the States. There's no such thing as what's called, a lot of people, sometimes like I'll read magazines and they'll talk about maybe like a franchise industry. And there's no such thing as a franchise industry. But there are, however, 85 industries franchising. As far as what we have here in the United States, some statistics, again, we have about 2,500 different franchise systems to choose from here in the U.S. Other countries are franchising, by the way. And in fact, we've had some great concepts actually come here to the United States. I'm trying to think of some that come to mind. There was one of the very first interviews I did, Anita, it was a franchise called Quick Curb. And they're from Australia, actually. And a really neat concept. But I believe they got their first franchisees here. I think it was actually in Florida. So the answer to the question is yes, there are other countries franchising, but no one has embraced it like the United States has.
Well, what are some of the other countries where you will typically find franchise systems?
The other countries would be, Australia has some franchise opportunities there. New Zealand, India is starting to franchise. You can actually go on the Internet and there's websites dedicated to franchising in India, or there's websites dedicated to franchising in the UK. Again, you're not going to have as many choices as you have here in the U.S., but I suspect that that's going to change over time because, again, other countries have seen the success of your companies like your Subway and, your Quiznos and, but they're going to run into some problems. Just like, a lot of U.S. franchisers did. I did my thesis, Anita, on the internationalization of U.S. franchisers in the U.K. And it's interesting because you think of the United Kingdom, you say same language, same culture, but there's been a lot of franchisers here in the States that have gone to the U.K. and they've just totally bombed there. They've ran into a lot of complications and a lot of problems, which I suspect other countries may do here. They might have franchisees. They might start franchising here in the United States, and it may not work because of different culture, different laws, things like that. So, but no one has embraced it like the United States has.
Well, Marty, I'd like to switch gears a little bit, and many of our listeners listen because they are looking for very specific prescriptive advice. Mm-hmm. So for our listeners who may be considering purchasing a franchise, getting involved, or, in some way looking at the whole franchise option, what would you recommend for them? For example, what would be general advice you would give to someone who is looking to buy a franchise?
It's a great question. It's usually, that's a question, Anita, that a lot of times when I'm doing an interview, I'll ask franchisors or franchisees, what advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur looking to buy a franchise? Because it's a very long and big process. Usually to answer that question, I usually break it into a couple different parts. The first question I like to ask someone is, why do you want to go into your own business, or why do you want to buy your own franchise? I think that's an important question to answer. And, one of the most frequent answers I hear is, I want to be my own boss. And I'm sure you've had that experience too, working with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, which I totally understand, because I used to say that. I remember when I was in my young 20s, Anita, I was having a conversation with an older gentleman who was a very successful entrepreneur, and I was telling him how I wanted to go into my own business. And when he asked me why, I had the same response. I said, because I want to be my own boss. And he called me ignorant. And I was really taken back by that. I said,
he called you ignorant?
Yeah, here I am. I'm thinking that, I've always had the highest admiration and respect for entrepreneurs. And here I am telling this gentleman this, and he called me ignorant. And I said, why, did you say that? And he said, because every one of your clients is essentially going to become your boss. And he was right to some extent. I mean, when I started Franchise America and we had 400 or so clients, every one of those clients essentially, was my boss. And I had some nice bosses, and I had some not so nice bosses. Hopefully they're not listening to the show. But, you never really, I think, become your own boss. I think the customer does essentially become your own boss to some extent.
So what would you consider a good reason for wanting then to get into a franchise?
I think it has to be, and this is something that I emphasize to my students, Anita, or prospective entrepreneurs, I think is, find something that you're truly passionate about, something that, you truly enjoy doing. Ray Kroc, who brought the McDonald's concept to the world, he had a wonderful quote. He says, choose a job that you would do for free. And I think it's the same thing when selecting a franchise, because there's so many different concepts out there. There's just so much to choose from. You want to choose something that you really enjoy doing. I think I hear the music coming.
Yes. Well, we have a break coming up. This is the half-hour break. Do join us. We have another half hour to go with Marty McDermott talking about franchise trends and franchise tips. Please join us after the break.
More and more people are starting their day with informative, focused business talk. Top experts. Today's business issues. Voice America Business at voiceamerica.com.
Here's CEO and founder of Six Disciplines Corporation and author of Six Disciplines for Excellence, Gary Harpst, with this week's Six Disciplines tip of the day.
Aligning systems is easy to say and hard to do. It's what happens after you go off and set all of your priorities and all the enthusiasm is built, and then you're left with figuring out how to make the processes, policies, technologies, people, measures, all those things fit together to deliver great performance. I'm reminded of a misalignment one of our clients had. It was a small printer who was going to purchase a $1 million printing press, and I asked what the process was for doing that, and he had an elaborate 6-month, multi-man-month project to evaluate all the best products. It's a big decision. He later mentioned he was hiring a sales manager, and I asked what the process for doing that was, and he said, well, I'll take him to lunch. Clearly, there's a misalignment. When you're hiring a sales manager, 20-year person for $60,000, you're making a bigger decision than you are acquiring a printing press. So aligning systems is about getting all those pieces to fit together to fit your strategy.
For more information, visit us on the web at www.sixdisciplines.com/VA.
Are you a small business leader who seeks excellence in your business? Do you want to improve the short and long-term strategic planning in your business? Then you'll want to learn more about Six Disciplines. Six Disciplines is a new class of professional business improvement service which combines a systematic methodology, practical internet technologies, and local coaching to help the best organizations achieve lasting excellence. If you are committed to do what it takes for your organization to be excellent, log on to sixdisciplines.com/VA or download one of the many free charts, checklists, and other tools to put you on track to build excellence in your organization. To learn what it takes to be excellent, go to www.sixdisciplines.com/VA. When it comes to running a business, there is nothing more important than timely industry information to leverage your bottom line. SmallBizTrends.com is the resource for trends, issues, and opportunities in the small business market. Daily trend articles, newsletters, RSS feeds. You can find it all at SmallBizTrends.com. For personalized consultation or commission trend analysis, SmallBizTrends.com editor Anita Campbell is available by emailing her at anita@anitacampbell.com. SmallBizTrends.com, your one-stop resource for trends that influence the global small business market.
The bottom line in business talk. Voice America Business.
Welcome back to Small Business Trends Radio with Anita Campbell. If you have a question or comment, dial toll-free 866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Anita Campbell.
Welcome back. We're talking with Marty McDermott. Marty McDermott is from Franchise Interviews. And we're talking with Marty about trends in franchising in the United States, and also we're getting into some tips for entrepreneurs, prospective entrepreneurs who might be thinking about going with a franchise concept. Before we get back with Marty, though, I do want to take just one moment to thank our sponsor, Six Disciplines. Six Disciplines has just been a terrific sponsor. Six Disciplines is a methodology for growing a small business to lasting success. The methodology is outlined in a book called Six Disciplines for Excellence, which you can buy at Amazon.com or on the Six Disciplines website. Six Disciplines is also leadership centers, which are popping up around the country. It actually is a franchise concept itself. So do check out Six Disciplines at www.sixdisciplines.com/VA. Please remember to spell out the 6 in Six Disciplines, SIX, and it's /VA after the .com, V as in Victor, A as in Albert. I also want to remind listeners that archives of this show can be found at SMBTrendwire.com, which is our podcast site. You can find this particular show as well as all of our shows at SMBTrendwire.com. All right. Well, Marty, right before the break, I had asked you the question of what advice would you give to prospective franchisees looking to buy a franchise? And so you were in the process of, breaking that down into manageable chunks.
Right,
so let me just let you go.
Yeah, well, where I think I left off, Nita, was, I think it's so important. And, I think it was another guest that was on your show several weeks ago. He kind of mentioned the same thing. Find something that you're truly passionate about. I truly believe that it's very difficult to become successful if you're not doing something that you're passionate about or something that you love. So I think that's so important. And again, one of the challenges, or the difficulties, I guess you could say, of having these now 2,500 different choices of franchises to choose from in the United States is it sometimes makes it a longer process because there's more out there. There's more to choose, So it makes it a longer process. I think it's also important that an aspiring entrepreneur take an assessment of what their strengths and weaknesses are in addition to what they like to do. What are you good at? What are you not so good at? I joke around with my wife frequently that I have, 2 left hands. So I wouldn't be very good at, going into a franchise that requires fixing things or, anything that requires any kind of mechanics, you can say. Where my background is more in sales and marketing, so you can say. You interviewed a franchise several weeks ago that actually met in D.C., Our Town America.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was. And that kind of franchise for myself would be perfect. I actually have a background in new resident marketing. And, everything that gentleman was talking about, I totally related to. I understood exactly what he was saying. So that kind of franchise would be perfect for me. But, as big a fan I am of Subway, and, you mentioned you like them as well, I don't think I would do particularly well with the Subway franchise just because I wouldn't enjoy it so much. So I think that's so important to find something that you truly love to do. Getting back to, in the beginning of the show, we were talking a little bit about franchising, and I just wanted to go back to that because I think a lot of people don't understand the concept of franchising, what they're doing when they're buying a franchise. When you buy a franchise, you're buying a system, okay? In other words, you have to be totally willing to follow the system, the method of doing business. Franchising is certainly not for everybody. For example, if I said to someone, how entrepreneurial are you on a scale of 1 to 10, and you said to me that you were a 10, I would kind of steer you or that person away from franchising because this is somebody who is constantly thinking about new ideas on how to improve on things. And you can't do that in franchising. You have to be totally willing to trust the system and be able to follow the system. And if you kind of decipher or kind of steer away from those things, you're not going to get the same result. So,
interesting. It sounds, Marty, as if to be a good franchisee, you have to be good at executing.
Absolutely. You have to be willing to follow the rules. And you'd be surprised, Anita, at how many people, I believe, get into franchising and they want to kind of change the rules. Like an example I would give is, you bought a McDonald's franchise and you think that a burger would taste better with a little more ketchup or a little more mustard, or maybe add a couple extra pickles and they'll taste better. And that defeats the whole purpose of buying a franchise. So, it's interesting because I was talking about this last week to a friend. I think, somebody who would make a great franchisee would probably be someone like from the military, so you can say, somebody who has been taught to follow a system or a method, a way of doing things. Somebody who doesn't like following instructions is not going to do well in franchising. So franchising is probably, believe it or not, not for most people. When you're talking about entrepreneurs, because they're so creative and, they like to come up with their own ideas, they might become a little frustrated with this kind of method of doing business. So it's not for everybody. Trust is certainly important when you're going into franchise. You have to be willing to trust that the company has come up with a good concept.
Well, what else should prospective franchisees be looking at as they're looking at a decision to whether to buy a franchise?
That's a good question. What separates franchising from everything else, there's this fantastic document. It's called the Uniform Franchise Offering Circular. It's commonly referred to in the franchise industry as a UFOC agreement.
I'm sorry, UFOC.
UFOC agreement. Actually, Anita, you can. We have a sample of a UFOC agreement, or at least the elements, posted up on our website, franchiseinterviews.com. But what is it? It's a document. It covers 23 areas that one would need to know to make an intelligent decision on buying the franchise. What happened was, prior to 1979, I think it was a lot of franchisors would make outlandish claims on how much money someone can make. They'd basically say, you know what, if you buy into our franchise system, in a couple of years, you're going to own your own island. And
no.
Yeah, and well, but you'd be surprised at how many people actually fell for that. And here you are. You have a franchise, a successful franchise like a McDonald's. Ray Kroc did an exceptional job at expanding on the McDonald's system. I think McDonald's today is up to about 32,000 restaurants on the planet. Which kind of says a lot. I mean, that's a lot of restaurants in a fairly short period of time. It started back in the 1950s. But these other franchisors were coming into franchising, and they were giving franchising a bad name. And it was kind of becoming like, I guess you could say like a multi-level marketing or, pyramid kind of schemes where people were becoming very skeptical. So what happened was the FTC stepped in, and they created what was called this franchise rule, where all franchisors would have to answer 23 questions in this document, again, called the Uniform Franchise Offering Circular. Some of the elements, I won't give you all the elements, I'll just give you a couple of them, what's included in it. The UFOC would include things like the franchisor's name, any affiliates of the franchisor. It would talk about their business experience. I mean, that's something that you would want to know is, what is their experience in the industry? Because if they were a shoe salesman, 4 weeks prior to getting into the franchise, you need to know that. Hopefully the franchisors that I've interviewed, over the last year and a half, I mean, what I've noticed is a lot of them have significant business experience. I mean, one of them I was interviewing called Arizona Pizza Company. This gentleman has been in the pizza business since like 16 years old. So that's part of one of the things that you're buying when you're buying into a franchise is his experience of the industry. He knows it like the back of his hand. The UFOC also lists any litigation that's going on with the franchise. I think that's important to know. I mean, if you see tons of lawsuits pending against a particular franchise, that would kind of set off some alarm bells with most people. And I would probably perhaps steer you away from a franchise like that if you saw a lot of litigation. Mm-hmm. What else? I think the most important element of the UFOC agreement, it lists current and former franchisees, Anita. And I think that's the most important part of this UFOC agreement because these are people that you actually want to speak to.
So not just current, but actually former ones.
Former ones, which is probably just as important. So you see that's where the honesty comes in by having this UFOC agreement. Because would a franchise really want you to speak to a former franchisee? I mean, chances are, if they're a former franchisee, something happened. It's not always bad. Maybe they had something personal happen to them. And but there's always a chance that when you speak to someone like that they may have had a dispute with the franchise. So there's a list of questions, by the way, that you'd probably want to ask both parties. When you're researching a franchise, let's tell people you're gonna interview three different people. You're gonna interview the franchisor, which we defined in the beginning of the show. You're gonna interview current franchisees. And you're going to interview former franchisees. So when you talk about due diligence, I mean, this is it. I mean, this is a lot of homework. I had someone ask me several weeks ago, how long does it take to buy a franchise? It takes a long time, I think. I think, a lot of times I compare it to a marriage, so you can say. I mean, it's such a big commitment, and there's just so much information you need to obtain because it's a big purchase, in all honesty.
Well, we're coming up on a break, so please join us once again following the break for the final segment with Marty McDermott on franchising.
You're listening to The Bottom Line in Business Talk. Voice America Business.
Are you a small business leader who seeks excellence in your business? Do you want to improve the short and long-term strategic planning in your business? Then you'll want to learn more about 6 Disciplines. 6 Disciplines is a new class of professional business improvement service which combines a systematic methodology, practical internet technologies, and local coaching to help the best organizations achieve lasting excellence. If you are committed to do what it takes for your organization to be excellent, log on to sixdisciplines.com/VA or download one of the many free charts, checklists, and other tools to put you on track to build excellence in your organization. To learn what it takes to be excellent, go to www.sixdisciplines.com/VA. When it comes to running the business, there is nothing more important than timely industry information to leverage your bottom line. SmallBizTrends.com is the resource for trends, issues, and opportunities in the small business market. Daily trend articles, newsletters, RSS feeds, you can find it all at SmallBizTrends.com. For personalized consultation or commission trend analysis, SmallBizTrends.com editor Anita Campbell is available by emailing her at anita@anitacampbell.com. SmallBizTrends.com, your one-stop resource for trends that influence the global small business market.
Are you looking for a unique perspective on today's market from an experienced economist? Well, look no further. Listen to The Economic Contrarian with host Mike Norman every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time on Business America Radio. Mike and his guests will discuss new trends in the marketplace as well as emerging companies and opportunities. So if you want in-depth analysis from a contrarian point of view, don't miss The Economic Contrarian Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Time right here on BusinessAmericaRadio.com.
Keeping you a step ahead of the changing world of business. This is Voice America Business.
Welcome back to Small Business Trends Radio with Anita Campbell. If you have a question or comment, dial toll-free 866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Anita Campbell.
Well, Marty, right before the break, we were talking about questions that prospective franchisees should look at asking when they're looking to buy a franchise. And one of the things that I have been following when it comes to buying a business, buying an existing business, has been this growth in business brokers or intermediaries who help prospective buyers. Are there such intermediaries in the world of franchising who could help you navigate through this?
Absolutely, there certainly are, Anita. And there's like anything else, there's good ones and there's bad ones. The companies that I think are more respectable, the ones that I've come to respect over time. I think the biggest one is FranNet, which is a franchise broker. Franchise brokers, I have mixed opinions on them. For me, I recommend people that I think that they should go out themselves and find a franchise opportunity. I think franchise brokers, they serve a great purpose. You have to remember with franchise brokers, who's the client? It's a lot of times you see, like in entrepreneurial magazines or franchise magazines, free service. We'll help you find a franchise for free. Well, how are these guys actually getting paid then? Somebody's paying them, and it's the franchisor. So they have a portfolio, and it's typically maybe it's about like 100 different franchises. And in many cases, I know people who've used franchise brokers, and they've done very well. But a lot of times that franchise broker has steered them towards franchisors in their portfolio. So could there have been a better choice in some instances? Perhaps. I remember one gentleman who was he was using a franchise broker. It wasn't FranNet. I won't say who they were. And he was looking for a children's education franchise. And this franchise broker kept steering him away from the one that he was most interested in. And he asked me, why was he doing that? The reason he was doing that, I suspect, was probably because he wasn't going to get a commission on it. So I think you want to be a little careful with that. But I think some franchise brokers serve a very good purpose. A lot of times they can help you maybe identify what industry you're looking to start off with. If you can eliminate the food industry, well, you know what? That's probably 50% of the 2,500 different franchises that we listed. So I think they certainly serve a valid purpose. And I guess the bottom line with the brokers is there's good ones and there's bad ones. Just be cautious, and you have to ask yourself, who is the client?
Can you negotiate with a franchisor, or is it a case of this is what their offering is, this is what the price is, and take it or leave it? How does that work?
Yeah, the answer is absolutely. You can certainly negotiate when buying a franchise. I believe a lot of prospective franchisees don't know this, though. They don't know that negotiation is part of the process. I think what happens, Anita, is they see a fancy contract and, they think nothing can be changed. What I learned from doing, some of the interviews over the last year and a half is to not be misled into believing that the terms of a franchise program or agreement can't be negotiated. And that doesn't mean that everything in the agreement can be negotiated. But I think there are certain things that would be reasonable. A lot of times the terms of a franchise agreement, usually you'll see they're like 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, sometimes even 15 years. Prospective franchisees think that they have to live with that, that that's just part of the contract and that's it. But, what if you're a retailer and let's say you found a location that's offering you a 5-year lease? Are you really going to want to sign, a 10-year agreement with the franchise? I think you want those two things in sync. So I think there's certain things that are reasonable that you can negotiate. I think things like the royalty, I would be a little surprised if a franchise were to negotiate that part of the agreement. What you will find, that, and I've learned this from experience as well, is the newer franchises are more willing to negotiate than the older, more successful franchises. McDonald's doesn't need to negotiate anything. But if you do have a franchise that maybe only has one or two franchisors, I think one or two franchisees, what you will find is those guys are a little more flexible in negotiating the contract. So that's one of the advantages, by the way, of getting involved with a newer franchise.
Right.
The problem is they don't have a long track record. But think about our grandparents. A lot of times we joke around saying, how many of our grandparents wish they bought a McDonald's franchise way back when. So that's
easier to deal with. Maybe not the track record, but easier to deal with.
I would absolutely say so, and you might get a lot more attention too. So
exactly. Well, I'd like to switch gears just a little bit here, and I'd like to talk a little bit about franchise interviews and what you do, because that's actually a very interesting concept.
Thanks. It is. Franchise interviews, the way franchise interviews came about, Anita, was I started the company because I wanted to, one, get back into franchising, but two, our niche in the market, I think what makes franchise interviews different from every other internet site that's out there is, most of these other internet sites are all the same. They all say the same information about Subway. They're kind of like duplications. All the websites are duplications of one another. They all say the same exact thing. They say the franchise costs this much, we have so many units, blah, blah, blah. Franchise interviews, what makes it different is we give like an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising. So, I like to interview the franchisor, the founder of a particular system, so you can get an idea of the corporate culture. I think it's fantastic to interview franchisees. We've interviewed a lot of franchisees, over the last year and a half, and those, I think, are usually the best interviews for me. When you interview someone who's went from corporate America to owning, let's say, like a haircut franchise. I mean, it's incredible to me. So it's every interview I've done has been like a tremendous learning experience, and I'm sure you kind of do something similar. You learn something at the end of every interview. I say, wow, I thought I knew it all, but you know what? I don't. So that's what makes it a little different.
Now, what you say this website has interviews on it. What form are the interviews in? Are they audio or are they text?
We're adding audio to it. We're making a lot of changes to the website. We're actually in the process of we're forming some new partnerships, but we're going to be adding audio to the website. We're going to be putting all the interviews in Adobe Acrobat, so people can actually come to the website and actually download the interviews in Adobe Acrobat. We even spoke about putting some of them in a possible book, of all the interviews that we've done.
But today, if you go to that website, what's the URL again?
URL address is franchiseinterviews.com.
Okay, and if you go there, you're basically going to see some text.
You are, and you can see some of the different interviews that we've done over time. Certainly not all of them on there, but we're going to make some big changes to the website over the next several weeks. So absolutely.
Okay, and you've got also a copy of that uniform franchise offering circular agreement?
Absolutely. And I really, I think the learning lesson of anyone looking to buy a franchise is, if you are serious about any particular franchise system, whether it's Subway, Quiznos, it could be a Rita's, get hold of that UFOC and study the heck out of it, because that's kind of going to be like your Bible for franchising anyway. It's going to tell you a lot of information that you're going to need to know to make an intelligent decision to buy the franchise.
Okay. Well, we've got about 60 seconds left before the show closes. Is there anything you'd like to wrap up with, Marty, as far as what you have learned about franchising after all these years that you would like to share with listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. The one key element or the one key ingredient I found, Anita, in interviewing all of these successful franchisees or entrepreneurs, is the key ingredient is persistence. Persistence prevails. And persistence is one of those things that any of us can have. So be persistent and be do due diligence in your franchise search. And if anyone has any questions, they could always come to our website, call us, email us, whatever that may be.
Well, thank you, Marty McDermott from FranchiseInterviews.com. It's been a great pleasure and very informative.
Anita. It's been my pleasure, Anita, speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Small Business Trends Radio. To contact Anita or one of her guests about the show, email her at anita@anitacampbell.com. Tune in next Tuesday for another hour of Small Business Trends Radio with Anita Campbell.